All right. Well, hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's March, Jennie, Lusko.
Oh, welcome to March.
March 1st. Spring is coming.
Spring is coming.
In about 6 months. That's usually when we get to spring in Montana. Usually July 1st or 2nd is when we finally feel like the winter's done. Because it's just winter and then, oh, hi, it's summer.
It's like, I feel like March, there will be like a week of just sunshine. And it's like, oh, spring's here.
Just enough to fool
And then it like
you.
will snow again
Yeah.
or it gets really cold or whatever.
I will say we have found that there are mostly 3 seasons. And there's, like you mentioned, just a false peak of summer's head up out of the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let your guard down. And then it's like sub-zero again. And you're just confused.
Well, you get all of your like springy clothes out because you have to, in Montana, you have to have boxes
Jennie,
with.
what are your springy clothes? What is that? Is that like jorts? Like somewhere in between jeans and shorts, like jean shorts? So I feel like spring doesn't really have its own like wardrobe.
But you start to like, I guess it's just summer. You start introducing summer clothes.
I gotcha.
And so you like, oh, I'm going to get my clothes out of the box.
Really, it's more like, what am I going to wear to spring break? Am I going to Florida? Are we going to go to Disney World? Are we going to, yeah. And then,
Yeah, but you have to have winter clothes in a box and then summer clothes in a box. So I'm just saying, like, you kind of like, you're in that in-between space of
spring will get you into trouble. And then you're out in the evening and you're just chilly. You're just cold.
a light jacket.
You need a light jacket. You need a layer for the brisk evenings.
It's true.
Well, we greet you wherever you are this March, and we have a very special. We greet you.
Greet you.
We greet you. We greet you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Anthony Evans Jr. is our guest today on the show, who is a music producer. He's a singer, songwriter, thrice an author. He is he's amazing, is what he is.
He's a great guy.
He's a deep well.
Yeah, deep
one
well.
might say.
Kind.
Has a lot to give and gives it so well. He shares his upbringing, living with a famous pastor as a dad and growing up in a very gifted, strong family and finding and forging his own way. I think the saddest thing he said was when he was talking about how he was so quiet as a kid, so he got maybe a little bit less attention because they thought he was good.
Yeah.
And the squeaky wheels tend to get the grease, right?
It's true.
And so I guess that's a word for all of us parents, just remembering like, oh, just because a child is the least trouble doesn't mean they're just fine. So layering on that extra love and attention. And he, of course, shares that story, so I'm not putting words in his mouth. But
right. No, that's true.
He said about 15 things that I wanted to write down and make like spin-off sermons from, just like one sentence moments where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that was tasty and delicious.
So good. I wrote some of them down, so I'll share my notes with you.
I wish that you would. We could share them together with a milkshake with 2 straws. Sounds like a bad experience.
No,
I don't like a milkshake.
I do.
You do like it?
You
I don't like
do.
how thick your mouth feels just after a milkshake.
Okay, whenever we go to In-N-Out, you usually get a
That's not true.
milkshake. Yeah.
You
love getting a milkshake.
I probably in 10 visits to In-N-Out have had one milkshake.
No.
So don't say usually.
No, I feel like you usually get a milkshake. Like
Incorrect.
when we go to
Maybe
Chick-fil-A.
Maybe I did the last time, but I don't usually get a milkshake.
I would say out of 10 times, you'd probably get it 5 times.
Negative.
Yeah.
I contest your math.
I'm going to keep track now.
1 out of 10. Okay, so last time I did, but the next 9 I won't.
Okay.
You just remember that.
You remember that.
I will. And the funny thing is, I will. And in the drive-thru, I will. And you'll be like, what are you even talking about? I don't remember this contest.
I actually won't remember.
That's the worst.
I'm going to write it down.
Jennie, we can't trust and lean on your memory.
That's why I'm writing it down right now.
You're not going to have your Hey It's the Lusko's notebook with you at In-N-Out.
Drinks.
Milkshakes.
Milkshake.
I will say, you might be thinking of Shake Shack. I more often get a shake at Shake Shack, but it's in the name.
But you like shakes.
I don't like shakes. I just get them sometimes. Every time I finish a shake,
Do you feel like a pressure that you need to?
I don't like this. I think that's the problem.
You like the idea of shakes.
I think that I will like it, but then in my mouth, I never like how thick it makes the saliva in my mouth. I don't like that. See? It's true, isn't it?
I actually like milkshakes, though.
You know, I like them at places where they give you the metal can with extra because it feels like this delightful bonus. You're like, oh, I have shake to look forward to. but I never want that other
I have
shake.
shake to look forward to. We should go get a shake after.
Where?
Norm's News.
All right, it's a date. Well, Anthony Evans Jr. does not talk about milkshakes, but he was I would say, favorite guest of this last bit. Like, it was just really, really fun to talk to him.
So fun to talk to. Just refreshing.
He's been
Can't
on
wait
The
to meet him in
Voice.
person.
He is, he's fantastic. So you guys are going to love this conversation. We've got a shake to drink. You've got a conversation to listen to.
Go get a shake.
He does, at the end of the conversation, share about a new tour that he's going out on.
Yeah.
So if you do live in like Atlanta, Orlando, Tulsa, Houston, he mentioned, these are places where he's going to be in the next year. So that would be cool to see him in person with his sister Priscilla, with his dad Tony Evans for the conference. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love his dad, Dr. Tony Evans. What a preacher.
Special family.
What a gun he is. His great messages are the ones on fasting. He's got some tremendous talks. I need to remember to listen to some of his teachings on fasting, gearing up for Lent, because we're doing our church fast at Lent this year.
Yeah.
He's a beast. Anthony Evans Jr., ladies and gentlemen. Well, Anthony Evans Jr., welcome to Hey, it's the Luskos. We are so glad to welcome you on the program.
So happy to have you.
The program.
So glad to be here.
We never call it a program. I don't know why I said that. I just broke it already out the beginning.
I love it. That's the perfect word. You know what I mean? Let's pass out bulletins now.
Right. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Oh, man. That's so good.
It's all good. So glad to be with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Well, we've been circling around friendship for years. So many mutual friends. We watch you. I've seen you from a distance, and just seems like
we watch you.
Yeah, we watch you while you're sleeping. That's what we do. Got some cameras, installed them. Sorry about that; it's illegal. But it's been really just amazing just watching God work in your life and seeing the spaces that God's given you a grace to operate in. And it's about dang time that we met and getting to talk with you a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. Yes, I do feel like I know you guys. I know a lot of people say that, but it's just because mutual friends. Literally, we'll always be talking about you guys, and I'm just like, wow, I'm so close yet so far.
I know.
It's true. Or we'll have gotten to a church where you have just been maybe the previous weekend, and they're still buzzing about the ministry, or vice versa. Like we'll be coming and like they'll be announcing in the announcement video, like, oh, next weekend, Anthony Evans Jr. Everyone goes wild. And we're like, and then they're just like, sorry, this weekend's a dud. Just the Luskos are here. It's fine. We're John the Baptist. Okay. It's here what we do. We bugs, we prepare the
hilarious.
way. It's how we serve.
Not at all. Not at all.
So good. And man, well, we do want to get to in this conversation the new book, which is such a great concept. This is Where Faith Meets Therapy, which you co-wrote. It's your third book, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Book.
Wow.
So I do want to talk about that in just a little bit, and even just the title right there, Where Faith Meets Therapy. I feel like it's so many titles ask a question, and you're like, ooh, what does that mean? Like you lean in. This one, the answer is in the title. So a brilliant title, and I do want to talk about that. But maybe we just get to know each other a little bit. Jennie, where do we begin? Where's the Anthony Evans Jr.? In your curiosity, where do you need to start here?
Gosh, well, I mean, we just have so much respect and honor for your family, your whole family, your dad and your mom, and your siblings. And so, I mean, maybe just from the very beginning.
Would you say it's almost like we're talking to a member of the Christian House of Cards or Game of Thrones? Is that what?
Well, I haven't seen those shows, so I don't know.
Yeah. Emphasis on Christian.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. You know, I am so grateful to be a part of my family, and we didn't plan all being in ministry at this point. I especially was not the one. I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian. Like I was on this track for being something completely different than what's going on. But the legacy my parents set forth and what we saw, not on a stage or not books that were written or not radio, whatever, or none of that stuff, was as important to us as who we lived with at the house. The same house that my mom and dad have had forever. My dad still lives there at the house we were raised in. It's just, both of them created this environment that was family is what matters. Like you can come with me as a 12-year-old to the stadium for Promise Keepers, but family is what matters. You can, you know what I mean? You can come with me to the radio rally or do whatever, but you cannot, you only have, my dad used to say when me and my brother were younger and trying to get along, you only have one. If you were told you only have one of anything in the whole universe, how would you treat it?
Wow.
And that, as an adult, that became a thing. Like I only have one brother. I have two sisters on the whole planet. I only have one of each parent. And that became my mindset, especially as an adult, to cherish that. And then when I stepped into ministry, it was just like, I want to do this because I do feel a calling on my life, but I do want to honor. It's like honoring God, but and my family. It was just so real to them that I was like, okay, I want in on this, and I mean in on the ministry side, not in on the business that it becomes in America. But I meant I want in on this. If it matters this much to them, I'm down.
Wow, what a legacy!
Wow.
Yeah, that's framed so beautifully.
Don't mind me. I'm just taking notes here.
And for like the one person who might not have heard of your dad's ministry, we're talking about, of course, about Pastor Tony Evans. He's for years. How long pastored the Oak Cliff?
Doctor.
Sorry,
I just wanted to
He's also
clear.
a pastor. He's a doctor pastor.
I love that y'all are married. You can just correct each other on air, and it's not a big deal. Like it's just kind of like,
yeah. We're 18 years married.
Yeah, almost 19.
We stopped being polite. You're 14, so
No,
we just
Oh.
go for it.
I love
But
it.
he was Oak Cliff Bible Church, right?
The Bible Fellowship, yeah. He's in year 45, 44,
Wow.
45, yeah. And I didn't know that it was odd in some scenarios to have a pastor that's been in a church that long. Until I left home at 18. I was like, oh, pastors like change churches are only there for like 6 years and then go move on.
Like it's a term in the minor league baseballs or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like, yeah.
Literally, I didn't know, but he just started in an apartment. It started in a room at an apartment complex, like the little common area space.
He did start the church himself.
Yes, he did start
incredible.
it in a little clubhouse kind of vibe. And now it is what it is, and he is what he is. But he was just sticking to it. I mean, he just stuck to what he was called to do. And, and even looking now, and I guess it's because I'm just older and everything's so sentimental and I'm just deep about everything. I don't know what I used to think adults were so weird for that, but now I'm that one, but even thinking about the fact that my dad had so much opposition for the simple fact that he was a Black man in this he went to Dallas Theological Seminary, and like that sphere was not welcoming to him. And I didn't realize it until later, all the hurdles he and my mom were jumping over in all areas, not just that one. But I was like, I have this crazy respect for your stick-to-itiveness, if that's even a word.
It should be, if it's not, yeah.
To your calling, like you were just called to it and you just kept going. And you were going where no man's gone before in some ways. And because you stuck to it, you became a trailblazer. And you didn't know all that time that's what
I was on a Zoom with your dad one time. It's the only time I've met him. We met in air quotes because it was on a Zoom screen. It was during the pandemic. Pastor Jack Graham had arranged another Dallas pastor who's a doctor also. He arranged this Zoom with a bunch of pastors around the country just talking about Easter and whether churches were going to open, not open, just kind of trying to get a little bit of a unity among pastors in the country. And I remember when I saw your dad come on the Zoom, I was like, dang, that is like, I'm like hanging out with a member of the Mount Rushmore, heads of pastoral leadership here. It was, and just his voice is so, maybe one of the most distinctive preaching voices in history. Can we just call it that?
Yeah.
I think it can be, especially because normally he was surrounded by such like gentle talkers on the stations he's on. Normally it's kind of like, you're not going to hear somebody talking that hard at you. And then all of a sudden Tony Evans is on between like Chuck Swindoll and James Dobson. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, yes.
And
I love it.
In parenting situations, I'm not saying character different on platform off. Of course, I'm sure your dad has integrity, the same person everywhere. But did he parent you with that same voice, like that much intensity in like day-to-day life?
I have been asked that all through my whole life. And no, he is the most soft-spoken, gentle, like people think like, whoa, his kids must be like scared. No, he does not. When he's in his calling, that's when he does that.
Yeah.
And so he's very like, let's talk this out. Let's figure it out. My dad has never raised his voice at us, ever. Wow. I cannot. And so there's that much symmetry between who he is on stage and at home. There's just symmetry in who they are and were. And that to me is just, when you're dealing with preachers' kids who are always a little bit crazy, like that is the perfect thing to have for your kids.
Did you guys have traditions or things you really enjoy doing with your parents? Of course, your mom's in heaven now, and we express our hope and condolence with you.
Yeah.
And watching that was so moving to see you guys as kids, your tribute to your mom and all of that. There were so many around the country that we prayed for you and with your family through the midst of all that. We want to make sure and say that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, we have our family's full of traditions, full of them. And I now am realizing how much work it was for my parents to build what they were building ministry-wise and still maintain these traditions, from the Christmas traditions to the red "You Are Special" plate that we got if we did something great. And like all these nuances of things that they paid attention to now are like, yo, you're a beast. Like I walked into this podcast with you guys from the other room where the band is, where I'm recording a song for my mother right now. Like literally, I just got done, because I can't believe the capacity they both had and my mom had to make those traditions important. It's just wild looking back on it, the demand that was on them, but how they would stop everything to be like, this is most important. Like, you can find another speaker. Our kids can't find another dad.
Oof.
That was their mindset.
Wow.
That's
so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Gosh.
Let's talk about large animal veterinarian. I need to circle back. You said it like it was not a big deal in passing. I didn't know there were veterinarians that only dealt with large animals. What other industry is sorted out by size, right? I like that.
Where did that desire come
from? Is that still on the back burner somewhere?
Yeah, you know what? It is. Well, here's what happened. I'll be brief with it. I was the quiet kid. I was the third middle child, peacemaker kid. Okay. So I was very chill and easy. And my parents were simultaneously thanking God that they had an easy kid, while I was simultaneously thinking, why do my parents not spend as much time with me? So the place where I went to get away was a camp called Pine Cove in Tyler, Texas, where I worked with the horses. So horses became my catharsis. They became this thing in my life. So that's where that love came from. It was just weird. And my parents didn't figure this out until I was in my 20s. They were just like, oh, we thought you were the easy child. Like, we didn't think, I was not voicing how I felt about anything. So they just thought I was easy. So anyway, horses became my catharsis. The guy who I worked for there stepped into my life and taught me how to do everything. Like, from working with the leather to how to break a horse to all this stuff. So it just became, it built my heart to be there. So that was, I want to do this forever. I want to work with these horses. And one day my boss, whose name is Tim, came up to me and said, hey, I get it. You want to work here. You want to be with me. But first, you need to go try singing, go try leading worship. If that doesn't work, then come back here. And that is where I went the other way.
And obviously you've had a modicum of success in that, so you haven't had to resort to the backup strategy of large.
I still go.
Yeah, still love the horses. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what's
That's
that quote? There's nothing
incredible.
better for the inside of a person's heart than the outside of a horse, right? Isn't that
Literally, yeah.
it's Roosevelt? Is that Eleanor? Yeah.
I've heard it. I don't know who it is, but it's real.
It's real.
It's real to me. So
because they read your emotions so well, right? That's the big thing.
Yes, that's the huge thing, is that they reflect you. And so you literally see your reflection in how this animal's acting. It's very, very, very interesting.
Wow. So what other large animals would you want to help if you were a large animal veterinarian?
I love that we're going.
Yeah, we're not letting you off this. This is pretty much this. This just became a whole zoology episode of Hey, It's the Lusko.
I know, but this is
because I will say, first time I went to SeaWorld, I literally was like, I was in third grade. I was like, that's it, found my calling. I'm going to work with killer whales. I felt something, so animals do bring that out in you.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that too, but I was like, yo, I'm too big for those wetsuits. That's what I thought.
And then later on you see blackfish, you start to see it all went really bad. So God saved me from a bullet on that one, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, it would have actually just been horses. I would have specialized. I would have been an equine scientist kind of vibes. I would have just specialized there.
Got it.
Have you heard of ski joring?
No.
Okay, you're gonna have to come out to Montana, Anthony, because it's actually a beautiful thing they do every year. It's like there's literally, you are in Montana when ... you go
Hmm.
to a ski joring. It's horses pulling a skier through a course
Hmm.
involving jumps and turns and
Um,
twists. So you got this cowboy, you got this quarter horse. Some of them, actually, the higher levels, they use race horses, and they have a section of kind of dirt, but then the horse is running down, and they wear these. It's snowy still, so they wear these very special shoes that have spikes. And then the
yeah.
person on the end of a 50-foot rope is literally being pulled through all these
Oh
jumps
my
and twists and
gosh.
turns, and
It sounds
it's
like a
epic.
disaster. Like, but in like a barbarian kind of fun way disaster. That's what it sounds like.
A
Totally.
barbarian fun disaster. Could
Totally.
that be a title for the next book? Just
Barbaric,
gonna
yeah, barbaric disaster. Yeah, I don't
A
know.
barbaric disaster. Maybe a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
song? I mean, there's something in that.
Maybe a line in a song. You know
Yeah,
what I
maybe
mean?
a
Because
line of
now,
song. Yeah.
yeah, now worship songs kind of have like
Describing
lines.
like a bad first date. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
a barbaric disaster. Oh man. So
love
do
it.
you often still ride? Do you still get down and
Dude,
yeah.
yeah, up until recently, I had at the max 4 horses, but up until recently, I had horses ever since that story I told you. I've had horses, and that's helped me stay connected to the guy I mentioned, Tim and his wife, who are only second in influence to my parents.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah,
Gosh,
That's so
that's
fun.
yeah,
so beautiful. That's
yeah.
incredible.
It's amazing. So many lessons learned there.
Okay,
So many
so
illustrations.
he told you, if you go try and do the music worship thing, if not, this is going to be a comeback too. Uh, so what was kind of the initial? Did you go to school for music? Where did the music thing come from?
No, I actually went to Liberty University, and I wasn't majoring in music, but my dad talked to Dr. Falwell kind of behind my back and was like, my son has a voice. And I wasn't into singing. I just thought everybody sings. Like at the church I grew up in, everybody can kind of sing. But I noticed that like in youth choir practice, if there was a part that needed to be figured out, the youth choir director would be like, Anthony, sing this part. Okay, everybody do that. But I didn't think, I just, they'd make fun of me like, you're the one that kind of stuff. And I just thought, okay. So my dad noticed that ability. He talked to Dr. Falwell. Dr. Falwell put me in a group called the Sounds of Liberty, and I was literally like so lost. I was like, my life is being orchestrated for me. I don't like this. I wanted to go to A&M. I wanted to major in this. I wanted to. So no, all that to say is I didn't major in music. The love for music followed my action. My dad always says that your feelings will follow your feet, and that's what happened in that direction. My feelings and love for music started after I was at Liberty, and there's a whole saga. Like I quit. After a year, I quit and went home. I was like, I want to work over there. I want to be at the barn. Like I had to go through it for this to become part of my identity. But it did over time. And my first big job in ministry and in music was singing background for Kirk Franklin, who heard me at something around that time and was like, "Come sing with me." And I thought, yeah, right. But he meant it.
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so going back a little bit, what was your faith journey like
Mm.
coming out of being raised in a Christian home, being a pastor's kid? What did that look like for you? Your faith becoming your own?
It was when I went to Liberty, it messed my mind up because all of a sudden I was outside of my not Liberty. I'll explain, but I was all of a sudden I was outside of this bubble that I didn't know was a bubble, and it was I was outside of the Texas, my church where I grew up, and I'm at this school. I'm kind of being, for lack of a better way to say it, kind of paraded around as Tony Evans' son is here at the. I was there with the
Like a
Graham.
trophy.
A little bit, like a
Yeah.
version, and nobody meant it in a bad way. They didn't know how it
Mm-mm.
was affecting me every time he stood on stage in front of the whole school and was like, "This is Tony Evans Jr. here," and the Graham's kids, Franklin Graham and Billy Graham's grandkids, were there at the same time,
Was
so they
that
got it
Will?
way
Was it
more.
Will that was there and Edward?
Will, Edward, and Roy, like they
Oh
all
wow.
were, yeah, Will and Roy, but they got it more than I did. But we would all see each other and be like, "Hey, is this happening to you too?" So
Like a
I
therapy
just,
group or something like that. Yeah.
Oh,
but I just had a moment where I realized I called my dad and I was just a mess. And he was like, Anthony, Psalm 128, I want you to go read it and then we're going to talk about it. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord. His wife will be a fruitful vine. His kids will be like olive trees around his table. And so my brain was like, at this point, I had this epiphany that God does not have grandkids. Like I have to figure out a way to do this on my own. And I don't know who I am on my own as it
Mhm.
relates to faith. Like I have no idea. Literally lost. And that was at 18.
Wow.
And so it became this slow journey, all while doing ministry, which made it a bit harder for me. It just became this slow journey into understanding who I am as Anthony Evans, not Tony Evans Jr. You know what I mean? And it took a
Yeah.
minute. That actually took a second. It took me seeing God be faithful to just me, not connected to my family. And it took time for that to grow to where I could see that beyond my family. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It took a second.
Totally. Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really,
Man.
really cool. And I love that it's Psalm 128. We've had it's just like a love affair with that psalm. We memorized that psalm last year, and just I really see that's like kind of how God's heart for us to change the world. If we'll focus on our own homes, our own souls, our own
Table.
vines, our own family, like eventually the peace that we want to see in Jerusalem will be upon Israel, right? Like we'll see that kind of spread out from one home at a time, and that's more manageable than just, oh, I want to see the world change. It's like focus on your own, what's under your own roof first, right? That's so good. Okay, so you said something really quickly in passing, but I think it's really key because for a long time I've had this theory about figuring out God's will. That part of it is, hey, look, what do you do intuitively well that you might not even realize? And one of the ways to figure that out is to reverse engineer the question and ask yourself, what do other people, when they ask you for favors or help, ask you to do? Or if I came to work for you, what part of the organization would you want me to be in? Like, where would you put me? And so, like you mentioned, people were always asking for your help with music. Like, and so you didn't even kind of see that gift on your life, but that's a kind of maybe do you think that's a hint maybe for other people? It's like, if they can't discover like what their purpose is, to kind of see that as kind of like a diagnostic tool to discover their calling?
100%. I think that it is. That's yes. Yes, 100%. I feel like a lot of people do feel lost in that whole, like, what is my purpose? What am I good at? What am I? And literally people are reflecting back to you. If you stop going, what do I need to figure it out? And just look at what's being reflected back to you. Yes, I 100% agree. And that could be like your life's calling is what they are reflecting back to you.
And so you put your feet out there on that first tour, right? And your feelings start following it. So at that point, when someone saw in you something you didn't see in yourself, gave you that opportunity. So then did you start to sense like, okay, maybe there is something to this? And that tour, I imagine, kind of freaked you out a bit?
Oh, totally freaked me out a little bit. I mean, no, a lot of it, because I was traveling with Kirk Franklin. Like at that point, it was like the biggest, and he still is, like legendary kind of vibes. And I'm like, why would you hire me? Because I'm different. Like my singing wise, my tone is different than his singers. Like I wasn't like this like raging voice gospel singer, like this big runs everywhere. And one day on stage, I'll never forget this. He walked up to me. Kirk is notorious for randomly handing you the microphone. And you're like, we didn't rehearse this. This has nothing. I don't know. What are we doing? He'll just hand you a mic and call you to the front of the stage. And he did that to me at Royal Albert Hall in London, my first show with him.
Wow.
Yeah. Out, Anthony, come here. I was like, I don't want to go. Like, you know what I mean?
He's a bit of a mad scientist, isn't he?
Yeah, and he creates on the fly, and you just have to be a part of it. And he handed me the microphone, and he whispered in my ear. I started to sing, and he whispered in my ear, "Stay right there." And it was this weird moment because I was being me. In that moment, I was singing like me. And he whispered in my ear, "Stay right there." And he said, "I hired you to be you." And given all the things that were going on around me, all the things around me were different. And I was trying to be, in some cases, like everybody around me. And he was like, no, what makes you special is that in all these tones that are just these monstrous tones, yours cuts through when you're being yourself. It does not cut through when you try to be like everybody else. And you can tell, you're being disingenuous to yourself at that point. So he taught me the art of staying in your lane. And that is what opened the door to more. That is literally why the saga continued. And I got discovered by Jason Ingram, who at that time we were both kind of figuring out what we were doing. And now he's one of the biggest songwriters in Christian music. But it was me staying true to myself when I was plugged into a world where everybody was different.
Wow. That is incredible. I love that phrase, the art of staying in your lane. I think that's such a life-changing thought, is stay right there. I hired you to be you. That's
And
huge.
don't become a Xerox copy of someone else, because the moment we do that, we begin to short circuit what makes us useful, right?
Completely. I think the Lord at sometimes whispers in our ear, stay right there. I called you to be you. Like I didn't
Yes.
call you to be everything else around you that you're seeing. Like, and sometimes we associate our call and the success of our quote unquote success is, are we taking off in the way that we view success? And then we start to maneuver ourselves toward what somebody else is doing that made them take off. And it's like, no, that's not it. You know what I mean? That's not the definition of success. I always think, what would have happened if I would have been disingenuous to me and then become successful? For the rest, quote unquote, successful. For the rest of my life, I'd be singing songs I don't like, doing something that isn't me. And if I tried to be me, the audience would be like, we don't want that. We want the not you version of you. That would be the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I'm so grateful that that did not happen, because that would not be fun.
Yeah, if you wear a mask to get a job or to get a relationship, then you have whatever you wore to obtain, you must wear to retain, right? You got to keep wearing it every
Come
day.
on.
And
Preach
because they
it.
didn't actually fall in love with you, they fell in love with this version of you that's not, and this is a figment of reality. So,
Dang.
so how much better just to, I mean, and I think you have to be careful with language like you do you, right? Because we
Right.
also want to be our sanctified us, our redeemed us,
right.
not
Yes.
excuse selfish, sinful behavior. That's just me. It's like, yeah, but Jesus also got you out of that grave, bro. You know, so you got to
Exactly.
pull
Yeah,
up your
yeah,
big
yeah.
boy pants and be a Christian, right?
Yes,
But at
that
the
part.
same
Good.
time, the permission of being weird, fearfully, and wonderfully made unique. He didn't just make one animal. There's an aardvark. Dude, have you ever seen an aardvark? You know, and I like to think that I'm the aardvark version of the body of Christ. You know, it's like I get to be an anteater. I get to be a zebra. They're not all different, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of being true to yourself. True to
In
your
the right
sanctified.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
true to your sanctified self.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure we're super clear, everyone. Just,
We have to just like, can we from now on just assume that that's what we mean? Be true to your sanctified self.
yes,
Patent pending.
all caps.
All caps.
I
No
love
cap.
it.
Okay, so
Yes.
so at that point, you begin to lead worship more. You start to get opportunities. Did you begin the songwriting journey as well with Jason, or was that more performance
Yes.
collaboration?
Yes. It was a little bit of both, but the president of the label that I signed to because of Jason, his name is Jeff Mosley. At that time, he was known for Mercy Me. That was like when Mercy Me happened. It was with Jeff Mosley and INO, and then soon thereafter, Phil Wickham signed. It was like that group of people, and they were like, Anthony, do you write songs? And I was like, no. They were like, yeah, you do. You just don't know that you do yet. So they put yeah, they put me with Jason Ingram, a young lady named Jennie Owens, who was in
Mm.
Nashville at the time, just sweet Jennie Owens, and
Yes.
man, Chris Eaton. I wrote with a lot of monster writers in Christian music, and at that point, I was like, oh, I can't write songs. I didn't know that I could do this, and I can write with these people. So it did start back then, but this is where another hurdle came. I was in an industry where I was not gospel enough and I wasn't contemporary enough. I was sitting in the middle. And this is 20 years before everything that we have out now that's right down the middle. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I went on tour with Maverick City this summer and Kirk and all those guys. And I remember sitting in this arena looking around with a smile on my face. Like I was told this was never going to happen.
Wow.
Like I was literally told, pick a side. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Dang.
So, but I was having to deal with that was more of the whole like, Anthony, I've called you to you. I've called you to the sanctified version of you, and stay in this lane, because you have no idea. I didn't have idea 20 years later what I was building for now by staying in my lane back
Wow.
then, which was about more of that.
And
Yeah.
not caving and just being in one of the rigid compartments, right?
Yes,
Because
I
there was more rigid, like that's this, that's that, but there wasn't kind of, hey, we can paint outside the lines here, which is where you kind of saw the
Yes.
future.
Yeah, it was painting outside of the lines, and kind of way early in that whole vibe. And I did conform and make one album that I to this day am like, I'm so glad that didn't pop off, because that would be one of those like singing the songs you don't love forever. And it's no offense to the people I wrote them. It was great, but I was trying to make myself fit a box. And I was like, this is not going to be fun. It was like when you wear a size 12 trying to walk around in a size 10, like it's going to rub you wrong. And you're going to have calluses everywhere because that was not made for you. And that, yeah, there was a period in there, but I just kept going.
And there's a parallel to that, I think, for all of us to be aware, to be wary of, especially right now in this, as the world's so violently changed. I think for me as a preacher, I think everyone has different sort of applications. But the moment I start to think as I'm writing a sermon, not what's going to help people, what does God want to say, what is true, what's God's word say, but instead I'm thinking, hey, what's going to pop off on YouTube? Like that is where. Of course, that's corrupted, but it's also going to actually counter, sabotage the creation of anything. And I think if you're writing a song that's going to be a banger versus, something genuinely discovering something and creating something. Yes. So I think that there is a danger for all of us in letting the sort of commercial side of anything influence the creation of it, right?
For sure. I think that allowing the commercial side to influence to a point where it starts to counterbalance your calling. What ultimately happens is my dad, I was on the phone with him when I was 26 and I wanted to quit. And my definition of success was wrong. I was defining success on industry and charts, and I want another song on this chart, and I wanted to and my dad said, Anthony, that's all great. But if you end up getting that success, you're going to be miserable because you can't take this success and then go write a check for peace. You're not going to be able to do that. And at this point, you're forfeiting your peace to attain this. And it is a blessing that God's not giving this to you because you will be miserable. And, if you get he basically said that your cries will echo louder in a bigger home.
Oh, jeez. Dad. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. That's what you get having Tony Evans as a dad.
Yeah, I guess so. But he said it in a very calm, pleasant voice, not preaching.
Yes, he didn't yell at me ever.
Yeah, there's this old Warren Wiersbe quote. It's from this book. I don't know if you probably read it, On Being a Servant of God, where he says, if you don't have God's help and blessing on your life and his hand on you, you'll either you'll either fail miserably or be an even more miserable success.
Ugh.
So even if you're able to do it, you won't be happy in it. Your echoes will cry louder in a bigger house. That is punchy.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. So I'm so grateful for the grace of God and while I was figuring this out, I'm so grateful for His grace in it because I just see it so much clearer now. I just see it so much clearer now.
So maybe what would be some best practices or some maybe just tips from you in approach, because of course none of us want what we do to not succeed. So it's like we're unable to separate that competitive drive out, and I don't think we should ever or can purely. Paul still said, I want gold, not silver. So it's not like we're like, well, I don't want to be successful. It's like, well, bull crap. Yes, you do, and and I don't think God doesn't want you to. But I think what would be some ways where you can pull out that ego side of it while writing a song or while, doing whatever that have been helpful to you? What grounds you in the midst of what you're doing?
Ooh, good
question. I think that I love that question. And I think the first thing that came to my mind is, what is the goal to you? Like, is the goal you being at peace? Like, we have to redefine what that goal is. Good. Because gold in our Western culture is stuff and charts and all these things that God never said was gold. Like, we have to redefine what that gold is. And for me, am I doing what I'm called to do? Am I pursuing excellence and am I at peace? Are all those things happening? That to me is the gold. If there's extra fireworks attached to the gold with a chart or a sold out that's great, but that's not the gold. That's not. And if you make that the gold, if that becomes your success, at some point you will become a failure. Like, at some point, you're not going to be at the top of the charts anymore. At some point, you won't be selling out stuff. If you make that your success, you're just set up for this not working eventually. You know what I mean? So for me, it's the peace, the calling, and the pursuing of excellence. I'm good. Boom. I'm good. Yeah.
And it reminds me
of... There should be a greater demand for that anyway. A person at peace is going to create art that other people want, right? So it's almost like in not chasing it, you create the circumstances under which the best creation can take place too, right?
Yeah, I love that.
For sure.
It makes me think of Psalm 23. It's like, if the Lord is your shepherd and your focus is on Him, the end says, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. It's kind of like, if you have it all, if you if you have it in the right perspective and priority, those things are just going to follow you. Even if you're like not seeking him, they're just going to be there because that's how God rolls. He wants to bless you. He wants his favor to be on you. He wants you to be successful in what he's called you to. But when that doesn't become the thing, when it's not the focus, but the enjoyment of it.
Totally. It's going to follow you because you're with him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, I mean, yeah. Like when you are with him, that is going to follow you. And I am so down to be, I'm just at this point, I'm like, I don't want to be anywhere else. It's too much work. Like it's too much. It's not fun. It's not fun. You know?
Honestly, it's so refreshing, Anthony, to see God move in your life and use you and see. I mean, I just see like just a childlike faith and wonder and curiosity in you, and just seeing God, like even just the story that you've told us of how he's just led you, and he's been so faithful to kind of just make it apparent and like, oh, I didn't even realize. Thank you, God. Here I am. And obviously it takes hard work and it takes intentionality, but it's so refreshing to see that sweet spirit and that sweetness of God. I just trust you. If you're leading me in this way, I'm here. I'm here for it. And it's beautiful to see. Thank you so much for how you live your life just before the Lord.
I really appreciate that a lot. Sometimes it doesn't, necessarily feel that way, but when, as you say that, when you said like the childlike faith thing, I remember I mentioned this the other day to somebody. I remember my dad, when I played Little League baseball, they had me in every sport because I'm just a big guy. They were like, "Oh, you're going to be some kind of famous athlete." You know what I mean? I remember baseball,
some
going
kind
out
of
there,
famous
horse jockey. Yeah. You're like, Dad, I just want to be a horse jockey.
That seems like not that. Let's try something else. But
you're like, you're about 3 feet too tall. Sorry.
Yeah, literally 3 feet too tall, and like 50 pounds too big for that. But my dad, I played Little League baseball, and I would grab the bat, and I was having the hardest time making impact, like touch. I could not hit this ball. It was making me crazy. I remember giving all that I could, and I'm the kid that's hyper emotional, so I got really frustrated. And my dad came up and did what a lot of our dads did, which is wrap his arms around you and grab the bat with you. And then literally all of a sudden I became Babe Ruth. Like I was like, this is the most amazing, like I am the best baseball player in the world. And I didn't walk away when my dad came and grabbed the bat. I put forth my effort and my dad magnified my effort. And that's how I view this whole walk, this whole journey has been me being like, God, I'm going to do what I can, but please wrap your arms around this circumstance and help me make an impact. And that is what he's done. When I'm faithful to swing as hard as I can swing, he's like, that's all I need you to do. Here we go. Home run. That's what it's felt like.
Wow.
Anthony, have you preached that? Because dang.
Yeah, seriously.
I've said it on stage. I didn't know that being Tony Evans' kid was, it put, like we talk in illustrations. When our family's together, that's how we communicate. And I didn't know it was a thing. So on stage, in between songs or whatever, I'll think of stuff like this randomly. Like yesterday, I did it again. And I just say it. I just think this is how we communicate. But I'm glad that it
people
comes off
convulsively start sobbing in the fetal position all around the room. It reminds me of your sister Priscilla at Passion. One day, she gave a talk, and she used a similar analogy of Simba roaring. And at the hyenas, and he didn't know Mufasa was behind him, and so he roared, but Mufasa roared, and it magnified his roar, it didn't change his roar. And she told that story to close her talk down at Passion. And I was like, dang. It was like, so we will get up and at the enemy and roar, and the Lord roars behind us. And it was like the whole room just lit on fire, bro. It was amazing.
Yes, the whole room was like, let's roar now.
Let's all roar together. On 3, roar, you roar. It's like when Bishop Jakes will have everyone like flying like eagles in the room, and everyone's like, I can do it. I can do it.
Totally. Yes, that's the way we communicate.
And for those of you welcome to Thanksgiving at the Evans house. Yeah.
Literally. and for some people listening were like, wait, he said Priscilla at Passion. And so, my sister's Priscilla Shire, which some of y'all may know, but because we don't have the last name, people still don't figure, Is
that true? People don't make that connection?
People still will just be like, I didn't know that y'all were related.
Wow.
Like, okay. But I guess, if you're not, I don't know. But anyway.
She's a little known preacher struggling to make it. We think that, with luck, she could crack into it.
But
she's trying to gain her confidence.
Yeah.
By the way, your sister is so encouraging. I've gotten to connect with her just a few times. And she's always just like, focus in on me, like encouragement, things like speaking life over me. And oh my gosh, I just love her so much.
Oh, thank you. And she appreciates and loves you guys. She's very that's who she is. That is who she is. She's always been that way, and I love that about her. And I'm like, how do you? I mean, she can be in the busiest green room ever, and when it's time, I mean, she'll just be like, and it's a genuine like all in. It's
Totally.
not. Meanwhile, I'm like squirrel.
Yeah.
I'm just all over the place.
Shiny objects. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing. Now, how
So,
has it been with her? She's got the one lung now, right? Didn't she have to
well,
have a
it's
lung removed?
well, the upper lobe of her left lung. So it's not one. It's like one, and then the upper lobe. So it's almost like one and a third or one and a half. You know what I mean? But that was
God.
so crazy. That's a whole other man. Ugh. I mean, that whole phase of our lives. When you mentioned that her getting that surgery was on a month after we lost our mom,
Yeah.
and we were like, "You have to be kidding me!" And we lost our mom a month before Priscilla got that surgery. And for the 2 years before that, we lost 8 family members back to back. It was the weirdest
Mm.
Twilight Zone feeling ever. So Priscilla is doing great now, and we're so thankful for that. She's fine. She's great. She preaches like her lung capacity was more than what is normal. So now she's at what's normal. So which was beautiful.
Wow.
But let me tell y'all, it was the weirdest thing, especially for her, obviously, because she's the one getting the surgery. But we just lost our mom, and then we went to the same hospital a floor up to go and sit in the waiting room with our sister to get this surgery.
Mm.
It was like, are we back here? Was it 4 weeks ago that we were here with our mom, and now we're back here with our sister, one floor up? And there was something which is we look for the beautiful moments and all this chaos, but my sister, and pardon me, when you mentioned the surgery, my brain just went
No,
back to
yeah,
all
for
this stuff.
sure.
We, we had after her surgery, she's obviously in recovery, and we're there, our family's there, but Chris Kane and Beth Moore, like all her friends are just around her. And then we grabbed her hand, and she was on this stuff called Dilaudid, which is like the strongest pain medicine ever. And I just grabbed her hand, and we were just talking to her, but she really wasn't communicating back. Now, a few hours later, she opens her eyes and goes, "Oh my God!" She could hear and feel everything we were doing. And I was like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" She was like, "She could hear us, like she was with us." And that's because they gave Priscilla the same medication they gave our mother, and we never knew if our mom could hear us when we were telling her
Oh,
how much we love her.
Oh.
And Priscilla came out of that, whatever that was, and was like, "Oh my gosh, like when you grabbed my hand, I felt it and I could hear everything." And it was like this random beauty for ashes moment where that was just the little, at that point, any glimmer of any kind of hope.
yeah.
So that's just one of the instances that happened that made us like, wow, because we were whispering in our mom's ear how much we loved her and appreciated her as she took her last breaths,
Oh.
hoping that she can hear how much we care. And now we know that she did. Like,
Oh my God.
and that's one instance of all the things that were happening at that point in our lives before the pandemic, before our lives
Oh
shut down.
my
I mean, after that, you know
gosh.
what I mean? It was,
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Golly.
That's
absolutely.
treasure that you would open up and
Treasure.
hear that. I think, yeah, that hits us too. I think we think about the first time we had to go back into the hospital where our daughter had died. Like
Oh my God.
it was so hard to walk. Jen and I both, they were guiding us. I had ironically broken a rib, so I couldn't breathe, and I was going in to get an X-ray, and then they were numbing that surface so I could get a breath in and all this. But we walked past the room in the ICU where Linya had gone to heaven, and so like
Mhm.
seeing that room again, like so even like I'm sure being back in that hospital, it's just all the smells, all of that, it just
Yeah.
and only a month later for us, it was years later, but that's hard. But then also to get that almost like dispatch from the front, like
Yeah.
almost we had a very similar moment when a paramedic that had been there that night saw us at a restaurant afterwards and sat down at our table for a few minutes and told us from his perspective, when we were so hungry for anything from his perspective that would help us understand, what had happened when she had died and all the rest. And he was so gracious and then ended up later on buying our meal. So when our check came, that paramedic who had tried to save her life had paid
Oh,
for the
wow.
meal, and he's a Christian. And he told us from the second he walked in the room, he had been praying for us, praying for her, all of that. And then in a fluke, terrible disaster about a year or so later, he had died in an avalanche. And so he ends up going to heaven. So it was just almost like but that glimpse, that moment with him that night was almost like that, like POV you didn't get
Yeah.
before. So almost like what you're
Mm.
saying from Priscilla was almost like a deleted scene that you now are getting to watch,
Yeah.
right?
And it makes the story more
Absolutely.
complete, even though the story didn't end the way you wanted it to.
Yeah.
It gave you another angle where you're like, oh my gosh, it wasn't as bad. It's horrible, but it wasn't as bad as I thought in
Mm.
that moment. So yeah, that's wild.
What a
And I'm
mercy.
so sorry for y'all's loss. All these, I know yeah, it's
Yeah. Well, we get
time doesn't.
united by hope, and
Thank
we
you.
become, our lives become richer. And even though none of
Yeah.
us would pick that, I mean, we would pick to be with them, but God in some way allows our life to on earth have a greater sense of connection, a greater sense of empathy. We're able to love more because of the hurt that we faced, right?
Mm.
Hmm. Yes, yes, for sure, for
Can
sure.
I ask, because you've shared some really great stories of your dad, um, maybe for the parents listening, what would be some things you loved about the way your mom approached life, or she
Mm.
approached parenting, that would help us all to, sort of live out of that example?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this song that I was singing in the other room before I walked in here, and it's literally like I didn't know, like, sh- moms are like superheroes. It's so weird. I have this soft spot in my heart for moms because they obviously they dream of families and but there's so much of themselves that they lay down and overlook and that sometimes forget about because of the responsibility of the home, and
Mm.
then they put so much weight on themselves. Which I mean, mom, you can't take that away from them, that matriarchal, that maternal instinct. But sometimes that instinct puts them in a position where I watched my mom deny herself. Now I'm looking back like, oh my gosh, I'm finding out things that you wanted to do that you stopped doing for us. I'm finding out places you wanted to go you didn't go because of us. I'm finding out, just the way you wanted to be about yourself, you were not, because you were about us. And
Mm.
that is uh, that just makes me kind of get I have this wild soft spot for mothers, but also it makes me want to encourage moms to, not that my mom forgot about herself, but I'm like, please don't forsake your dreams. We gotta. I don't know. It's so. And this is. I feel like I'm speaking about something that I can't necessarily speak to fully because I don't know. I can't fully empathize with the life of a mother. But I'm just like, if I knew that my mom had these dreams that she let go of, I in my adult life would have helped her do every single one of them. And
Mm.
so I would tell moms to please be vocal with your spouse, with your children when they're able to understand, and just talk to them, not guilt them, but just talk to them about things that you love and things that you desire. And your kids, I just hope that moms listening, because of the communication, will have a moment where the tide turns and they get to experience everything being about them. I think my mom's soul wound, if I could say this, was what about me? But we didn't know it because she was stoic and so good at being the support role. And when we started to be all about her, even when she started to get sick, we were all about her. Everything was about her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get used to this. And we just had this moment of like, you were so strong. We didn't know that underneath that strength was a desire for somebody to go, how are you? What do you need from us? So kids listening, adult children who, if you have your mom and your dad, I don't care what age you are, you call them, you say thanks, and you figure out what's a little thing, write them a card. I'm telling you,
Mm.
that will change your mom's heart and life if she gets a note from you saying thanks for all the things that you may have missed her doing. Those are the things I would speak more to people who have their parents still, more so than to a mom. Because I can speak firsthand on that. Um, yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
Oh,
yeah,
No,
that's
that's so powerful. And I think you have a voice to speak to moms too. And I think, I mean, I know for me, like I receive all that you're saying.
yeah.
But what a
as a
beautiful
daughter and a mom,
as a
right?
daughter and a
Yeah.
mom, but what a beautiful perspective. Because I think that it doesn't have to be either or, like it doesn't have to be family or your
Right.
dreams. Like there is a way. And I think obviously when you first have kids, it's like everything is on hold for a while. But
Yeah.
like, um, but just being aware of God dreams that might be in your heart that you could pursue, but maybe it's at a different time, or maybe it's going to look different, or whatever. But I think there is that beautiful blend that can happen as you're a mom and what God's calling you to. And I think that that's just such a beautiful reminder of that and encouragement. It's really
Absolutely.
great.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yes.
When you navigate, like, because I feel like there's a unique grace on your life and you do it so well, you don't just serve inside the church and to
Right.
do what you're doing with worship leading and touring with, Christian artists, but also, doing stuff in secular spaces, stepping
Mm.
into The Voice, for example, or
Right.
playing the Beast in the Hollywood Bowl, which is such a great. I mean, I would be curious. How do you get into character for the Beast? Like, did you stop shaving for like a couple months out? Like, how did that look? No
That's
manicures for at least 6 months.
no. It was. I didn't have to go that far, but yeah.
But yeah, it's to step in that and to shine a light. And I think
Yeah.
that's such an important thing to emphasize is we can serve God not just inside quote unquote ministry, but also we need to occupy those secular spaces and bring the light in there. And, what have been
For sure.
some cool, maybe God moments or stories where you've kind of seen yourself sent
Yeah.
into that world, right?
I mean, so many times. I mean, there's so many of those, but I start by looking at it like a huddle, like a football team in a huddle. You don't go to a game. Like last night, I watched the Niners play the Cowboys. Nobody at that stadium showed up to watch the teams just huddle. Like who wants to see a team huddle for 3 hours?
Mm,
Nobody. You went to that game to see what difference the huddle makes on the field. Our
Dang.
churches, our vibes, all of our insular churchy things are huddles. The purpose of our huddles is to see what difference that huddle makes out on the field. Now, on the field, you have boundaries. Like I have boundaries around me when it comes to the things that I will do out on the field. But I'm not here to just discuss the plays and the coach. I'm here to show what the discussion of the plays and coach, what difference that makes on the field. So when I go to LA, when I'm living there, that's what it is for me. And there have been so many opportunities. Why am I had moments where I was like, how did I go from leading worship to Christina Aguilera's house for Christmas dinner? Like this doesn't make sense. But and she sat down and was like, okay, worship leading. Like, what is that? Explain that. So explain what you do to me. And I remember thinking, this is when I first got to LA and I was talking to her and using our churchy talk. And I was like, if I didn't know you, Anthony, in my head, I was like, if I did not know you, I'd be like, he's in a cult. Like the way we talk to each other, you can't say lamb that is slain to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean?
that's funny. But at least I'm washing the blood. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. They're like, wait a minute, this is
You
weird.
washing
So
blood?
yeah, like seriously. So that was my wake up call to you have to learn how to communicate in a way, just in an authentic, kind of unaffected way, but not compromising the truth. So that has been my, whether it's with her, I worked with The Voice for 3 seasons and have on and on. There have been some scenarios though where I've gotten called in and I was like, wait, what song? What's the name of this song? Can y'all play that again? I don't think you know what I
Run
mean.
that back one more time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a hip hop artist, and I didn't really know who he was before I got called in there, and I didn't know he was such a big deal. Man, they played me. I was gonna bring my nephews to the session, and they played that song, and I was like, I gotta go. Like, I don't. So
I
but
need to go washing the blood now.
yeah, clearly. Yeah, totally. But I get calls from people now, especially because kind of that gospel sound and stuff is a part of mainstream music a lot. I get calls and get to have, DJ Khaled will call my phone like 2 days ago and wants me to work with him. And it's the conversations we get to have out from in front of a camera. Those will never be seen, but that is more impactful. And hearing from them where they are, hearing stories that are outside of where ours come from and learning how to communicate in that way, that's a beautiful thing. I think when I was on The Voice, and tell me if I'm talking too much, because I know you have a time to it.
Without a
No,
But
doubt, the answer
please.
is no.
No.
Okay,
yeah,
beautiful.
when I was on The Voice, I remember, doing interviews for 4 hours. This was 10 years ago, but doing interviews for 4 hours. And then all that airs is like 30 seconds of that. And I got complaints and people calling, like, you didn't say Jesus enough. You're a worship leader. Why are you on the show? And I thought, you have no idea what is on the cutting room floor in that editing bay. You have no idea. You don't know how many times I said this, but you judged based on the 30 seconds that you saw. And in that moment, I thought, how many times do I walk into people's lives having no idea what's on the cutting room floor of their life? And I judge them on the clip that I'm getting to
Ooh,
see. And
Oh,
LA put
come
me in a
on.
position to stop judging people on the clip or stop making assumptions, even if it's not judging, making
yeah.
assumptions of people based on the clip that I get to see. And when you go past that in vulnerability and authenticity and not compromise, but a gentle, a roaring lamb kind of vibe, that is when the impact is going to be made in somebody's life who will never step foot into a church.
That's it right there,
Yeah, and
honestly.
that's what Jesus got criticized the most for, right? I mean, the biggest detraction made about his ministry was who he ate with, the spaces he went into, that he was compromising or getting dirty by touching tax collectors, Pharisees, sinners. But he would just eat with whoever, right? And he would drink.
Yeah.
He apparently drank and ate so much that they called him a drunkard and a glutton. You know, how much do you got to
Yeah.
eat to get called that? Right. So he
Exactly.
advanced the kingdom by sitting down at Christine Aguilera's table, so to speak, of his day, as Zacchaeus or whoever, and
Yeah.
would shine the kingdom. And he didn't compromise, like you're saying. So I think that is that fine line. So how do you kind of what rumble strips are there for you on both sides of that? Because I think for some Christians, they need to maybe be aware that when they're partying just like the world, trying to quote unquote reach the world, they're not reaching nobody because you've lost the
Right.
message and the uniqueness. We're not salt anymore. But on the other side, I think for most Christians, it does become the Christian potluck, and we're in the huddle perpetually like, yeah, what a great game. It's like, actually, you haven't even thrown a pass. You're literally huddled 24/7, right?
Right.
Come
Right.
on.
At that point, you're celebrating the knowledge that you all have. Like what? But okay, like that doesn't mean anything, you know. So I do think that the rumble strips. I love you saying that it varies and it's subjective, but to a certain degree, it varies and it's subjective. But there are moments where it's like I have drawn hard lines of this is not what I'm going to do, and for some people, you can't go to the party if you have an issue with whatever it is. You can't even be in the room. For other believers, they can be in the room and just be like, all their friends know that, yeah, they're not doing that or they're not going here. This is where they stop. This is where they're going home. And that's kind of what it's been for me in LA. Anthony invited, hey, after, later we may do this, but we know you're not going to go, but you can come and I'll roll through and hug everybody. But they get to see in real time, in real life, what it means to not be a monk, but to enjoy yourself, but with boundaries of this is my faith though. And I'm not doing that. So
Wow.
it is checks and balances, and my family and friends are always checking on me because it is it's Hollywood. It's just way, way different than the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
Yeah, good.
Wow.
it's,
It's good. And
That's
so you don't want to
incredible.
be the lifeguard that drowns because you're down there too long, but you also don't want to be at a lifeguard convention where you're just high-fiving all the other lifeguards, but no one
literally.
saved anybody for a hot minute, right?
Yacht club.
Oh, speaking of being a lifeguard, that just brought to my mind. You don't want to be just at the lifeguard training, but you don't want to swim up. I remember in lifeguard training, they said, do not swim up on somebody who's drowning that close because you will get pulled under. You have to go to a safe distance, 4 or 5 feet away, and throw them tools to use to stay afloat. Like that is what I have to always gauge my proximity, but I will get close enough to give tools so that they can stay afloat, but without pulling myself under.
Oof.
Thank you for saying the lifeguard.
Wow.
Or a
So
right hook, right? In serious
yeah,
situations, don't they
yeah,
train lifeguards to actually knock the person out so they can get them safely out of there?
that's actually true. They didn't tell me that at the YMCA when I was 18, but yes, they do. And I think that's like more ocean vibes.
I think if
Yeah.
it's really dangerous, because a real panicking person can pull you under,
Yes,
so they'll come up
literally,
and bomb, and then you
literally.
got to get them out of there.
So you are also a lifeguard.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Just you snuck that in there like it was no big deal, but
That
you're
was
like,
for a
I take
second.
care of horses. I'm a lifeguard. I was on Baywatch. It's fine. Is what it is. I don't do nude scenes. I got to draw the line somewhere. Rumble strip.
It's so funny. Rumble strip. Yeah, that was just like it wasn't a thing. It was like for 6 months, and I was like, I can't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Well, you learned some amazing truths from that.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Preach
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But throw that out between songs, right? Yes.
Yeah. Little, exactly.
Can we
Lots
talk
of
about the new book? Because Where
yes.
Faith Meets Therapy is the new conversation, this resource you sent out, kind of giving for us permission to see counseling and seeking help in therapy as not a betrayal of our faith in God. Is that
Yeah,
maybe a good way to put it?
yeah, exactly. It's I just I'll be as brief as I can, but I had a moment where I was like, I need help. I remember being in ninth grade algebra class, and I had question after question after question in algebra class. I just could not understand. There was a teacher explaining it very explicitly. She was explaining it. There was a book of truths with formulas in it. She was on the board writing all this stuff down. Step one, step two, step three, and I'd be lost. I'd have questions every 5 seconds. I'd have other people looking at me like, do you really not get this? I'd have the teacher going, oh my God, does he have another question? This is a lot. And then I had to finally admit that I need tutoring. The book of truth is the book of truth. The formulas are the formulas, but I don't understand them. So I need tutoring. And it was when I admitted to myself that I need tutoring, got rid of the shame of needing tutoring, and went to it. That is when I passed the class. That is when I did not fail, is when I admitted I needed help.
Wow.
Therapy to me is for believers. So in the world of a believer, therapy is when you admit to yourself, I need help understanding this book of truths and the formulas that are in it so that I can pass.
Come on.
Wow.
That's so good.
Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, when did you first get counseling, and maybe what was going on, and was that encouraged in your world growing up, or was that sort of was that the first time you went down that road with counseling, did you feel like there was some friction on that?
Oh yeah, there was friction because for some people, it was friction the same way in math class because you have other people who are looking at you like, why do you need help with this? Like x equals 5, like what's the big deal? So you do have people looking at you like that. And then it was hard on the other end because the first couple of therapists I went to, as I was trying to figure out who to go to, I went to somebody who asked me at the end of our first session if there's any way you can connect me with your father's ministry. I'd appreciate that. I was like, you just destroyed everything in me that wants to be in this room. Yeah. So there is this checks and balances of having to figure out the right thing, which for me, and some people listening may be like, what? But I found my therapist, and she's a general market therapist. So she's not at a church, because any church I went to, they had a framework of my family and they knew me before I walked in the room. I mean, anybody in the faith world knew my dad at least, or Priscilla.
I heard you and your daddy's sermon illustration. Do you still love Pogs? You're like, stop it. Yeah. I'm not 11.
Yeah, I can't do this.
Do you still love Pogs?
I don't like Pogs anymore. No.
Oh my gosh, Pogs. Oh my God.
Jennie just snorted. Did you hear that? She just full-blown snorted. And all it took was me talking about throwing Pogs, a slammer down on some Pogs.
It's so random.
It's so random, but so real. And that's what I think that's just
7th grade, bro. Big time. Had to coach some slammers.
Pogs.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. No,
did you have a good collection of Pogs?
I didn't have Pogs.
No? What?
My friends in junior high did.
What grade did you graduate high school?
Wait, how old? Wait, what year?
Sorry, what year did you graduate? What grade? 12th?
I graduated in 96.
Oh,
so
man.
It's been a minute.
It's been
a hot second.
What year was it when you graduated high school? Sorry.
96.
96.
Okay, yeah. So we were 2000. So you're 4 years older than us. So maybe the younger kids, because Pogs might have been right after you.
Pogs? Yeah.
You remember them?
So. Yeah, I remember the little things.
I planned for the rest of this episode to be about Pogs, if that's okay.
Maybe I was older at that. I was older at that point, so they weren't as big of a deal because I was like 17.
Yeah.
It was just below you. All of us young kids were still throwing the slammers down on the Pogs. Okay, so that makes sense. And counseling, and I think for a word to anybody out there, you should lose your therapy license if you are trying to get an endorsement or recommendation.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, goodness gracious, stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly. And
stay right there.
Yeah, and that messed with me, but it also, I kept going. I didn't stop. And so the long story short is I found a general market therapist who doesn't work in a church, but who acknowledges faith and was wanting to work with me on that also. But in my life, I have the faith side. I can go talk to anybody in my family or you guys or in any of the people in our circle and be good on that. So I needed practical ways to work out my faith. And from a psychological standpoint, so it is a delicate balance. And I've had people go, Anthony, you're on a slippery slope. Soon you're going to be like worshiping the stars. Like, I don't know, or whatever. But I was like, no, I just needed practical ways to work out my faith. I needed practical ways to deal with toxic people. I was a Christian. I am a Christian. At that point, though, I was a Christian who had been all about offense and had no defense. The best team in the world, if they're just about their offense, they're going to lose. I had no defense set up when it comes to dealing with toxic people, toxic scenarios. I just none. So you're going to lose. And I almost wish that instead of it being an algebra class in 8th grade, I wish I had a class about how to deal with toxic people. I would have used that.
Come on. Seriously.
Because we have Alexa and Siri for all our math stuff, right? But you can't ask Alexa how to deal with that dysfunctional friend in your life. Yeah.
Exactly. So that has been, I needed practical ways to build up my defense. And I think defense is a very biblical Jesus thing. You never saw Jesus crying and begging and trying to convince people of who he was. He told them who he was. You can take it or leave it with all love, and then I'm out. You never saw him going, I'm the son of God. I promise. Love me. All that stuff. You didn't see that. So I had to learn how to not do that.
Well, in
Right.
Jesus' dynamic of interacting with people, he knew, um, he had three friends that were at the highest level of proximity. He also had 12 that were, a bigger pool, 70 at a bigger pool. Similarly, he, had to deal with the difficulties of his earthly brothers. And they didn't believe. And so even sometimes they would want him to do things and he wouldn't do it. So like he knew the intricacies and the balance of emotional health and boundaries and to deal with people, who's going to get what access. I mean, I think that's all real stuff, right?
Absolutely. That's very real. And as a believer, at times I have set myself up because I just thought everybody gets access. I've set myself up to become a victim of my own compassion, and God never called us to be victims of our compassion.
And in this book,
It's good.
from what I understand, and we haven't read it yet, so full disclosure, we're asking a lot of questions because we are curious and we do want to read it and plan to. But you talk about, in what I've seen, your journey with depression and some of that stuff, and so it does
Yeah,
seem like in this book you go into, I don't know how much or how little you want to talk about that, but what that experience has been like for you.
yeah, I go into it quite a bit, and it was just I had to. There are some scenarios where I just could not figure out a way out. I'm an emotional person, and that's great. It's good for worship leading, good for connecting with people. But I was like, I got to figure this out. And therapy gave me, like, some people need reading glasses, some people need life jackets, some people need, like, and it was that for me. It gave me what I needed to see clearly, a way to get out or a
Yeah.
way to stay afloat. That's what therapy did for me. Um, and practical tools, just having practical tools to work out my faith. That's literally what the book is. Some people think it's this deep theological, no, it's literally like, here's what I did when dealing with toxic people. Here's what I did with dealing with guilt. Here's what I did with dealing with fear, shame. It's broken down into topics, and it's like, this is what God says about it. And here's step 1 and 2 and 3 of how to do what he's. Being anxious for nothing is a great verse to read. That doesn't work for me.
Mm.
Give me steps on how to be anxious for nothing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Life
Yeah.
changing. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Do you
Um,
see this book being um, maybe something that would help someone who is maybe reticent to go or doesn't
yeah.
necessarily have the courage to start a journey of counseling yet, where they can sort of learn the best and glean the best things you've learned from it, as well as I
Yes.
know your co-writer actually is a psychologist, right?
Yes, it's written with Stacy Kaiser, who is a licensed psychotherapist, and so she is the one giving the practical tools on top of. We're both talking at the same time, so that you hear it from, like, I'm a specialist in this area. Hmm.
So they're going to
Amazing.
get, as we read it, we're going to get some of the best glean lessons that would be maybe sort of all the best of going to counseling without going to some
Yes,
degree. They're going to get some help
yes,
in that way,
Mm.
it's a step. It's a step one. It's a step one for sure. That's
as
what it
well
is.
as a lot of your story and things you've learned along
Yeah,
the way. And
sure. Absolutely. A lot of that also.
how was the journey maybe different? Because this is your first book uh, you wrote just with another co-author, because your second book you wrote with your family. Is that right? All of you
Yes,
guys
yeah.
chimed in together?
It's called Divine Disruption: How to Hold On to Faith When Life Has Broken Your Heart, and that's the five of us writing about that time I was talking about earlier.
Mm.
Yes, this is the first time I've co-authored like this, where it's just me going back and forth. But I love that because I've got ADD, so it's cool to hear different voices in a book to me.
Totally. Oh
That's
man, I
awesome.
love that.
Well, what's new? What's now? You have all the music. Obviously, you mentioned you're behind that wall writing a song right now. You've got a lot
Yeah,
of irons in the fire. What are you excited about that you're working on currently?
I'm very excited about this new music, but more than that, I get to produce. That time I talked about where I didn't know what I was doing and didn't fit, I kept going. And so therefore I learned how to do a lot of the industry stuff, which led me to having my own production company, which houses all of our family's events. And that I didn't know that God 20 years ago was building that. Like, if I allow you to become successful now and these teams do it for you, you will not be able to do this later on with your family. So we have an event called Kingdom Legacy that is going to be in Houston, and me and Priscilla are going to go out on the road, and those are and do some events this spring, and that is what I'm excited about. Is that event with
Wow.
Ooh,
conference with all of us, but we got to, it's production stuff, so we're working on it now for 10 weeks
So
from now.
will you do
that's
music and she'll
beautiful.
preach at those events?
Yes, yes, and at the one
Wow.
with the whole family, it's conference style. I'm music. Priscilla speaks. My dad speaks. We do a table, sit around the table, and have this question and answer conversation. It's like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Ooh, I want to go to that.
Is there information where people can get tickets for that right
Yeah.
now? Is there a website?
Yeah, they can go to kingdomlegacy.com and get and register for that. And it's in person and virtual. So yeah.
And that's the conference or the tour?
That's the conference. The tour will be, registration hasn't opened for that yet. That will be at ferventtheevent.com. So Kingdom Legacy is with all 5 of us. Ferventtheevent.com is me and Priscilla on the road this May.
How many cities will that be in?
We're actually just doing 4 or 5 because Priscilla, my nephews are in every sport in college. And so that is her priority, is making sure she's at all that stuff. Priscilla is the queen.
Yeah, playing college football, right? Is that
right?
right?
Yeah, college football and college basketball is happening simultaneously.
What 2 schools are those?
That's Liberty. And they're both
at Liberty. Family school. Did Priscilla Did Priscilla go to Liberty as well?
No, she went to University of Houston.
Okay. What were you saying?
Someone was telling us that that your nephews are, I don't know. I just heard that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Someone told us that.
Someone told me that
Anthony's nephews go to college.
No, Liberty.
Good conversation. They go to Liberty
because our kids are Liberty University
our kids
online.
Are going to Liberty for high school and elementary school. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. So that's what's going on, and we're still working.
Fervent is coming up. That's 4 cities. What city? Do you know what cities those are?
Tentatively, Orlando, Tulsa. Orlando, Tulsa, Atlanta, and the 4th one I can't remember off the top of my head. And the 5th
Come on, give us West Coast. Give us West Coast. No,
maybe we'll come and do another little run of those. You know what I mean?
Got to do it. Can't neglect the West
amazing.
Coast. That sounds really fun. And with you 2 out on the road together, that should be some good times too, right?
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Yeah, this will be our 30-somethingth city or 40th city over the past few years that we've done it. So we're very excited to bring new music and a new message to that.
I do want to close with a question maybe about just what replenishes you beyond horses and the other passions we mentioned, music and all things. Do you have any other hobbies, or what do you work your workout like? What do you find that really kind of replenishes or refills your tank?
Yeah, it's really my friends. Being with my friends makes my heart. I have my family, obviously, and then I have chosen family. And there are these friends that are just my heart, these good people I have found. It's like as soon as I got healthier and kind of, my mom used to tell us to clear the table. She'd be preparing us something hot on the stove and she'd tell us to clear the table. If we didn't clear our homework and ding dongs or Twinkies or whatever, she would not serve us this hot meal that she had. And my life's table as related to relationships that weren't life-giving or edifying was full. Meanwhile, on the stove, God had these hot, fresh, amazing, healthy, nurturing, good for me relationships that he was waiting on me to clear the table for. So as I've done that, he's come and placed down in front of me these chosen family members that are so amazing. So that is what really, really gets me going. My heart full is time with them, time with my family, and the gym and trying to be healthy, which is very hard when you live out of a suitcase.
Yeah, you do.
Seriously,
Peloton,
you have to fight a little more for that.
What are your tips there? You like that Peloton? What are you doing?
Well, I have a trainer that puts I don't work out with him, but he gives me a grid that I got to fill out. And then I do have the Peloton situation. I just kind of bounce back and forth again because I get bored pretty quick. So I'm like, all right, what's new? What's next?
And what's in your ears while you're in the gym? You got music, you got podcasts, you got books?
Recently, it's When to Walk Away, and then a book called Atomic Habits was right before that, which I love.
Yeah,
we're reading that right now.
That's a great book.
Well, Levi's reading it for the second time.
Very good book. That guy's smart.
So smart, and it makes so much sense. When I'm reading, I'm like, this makes so much sense. Like, yeah, you can't change by 100% in a day, but change by 1%, and 200 days later, you've changed by 200%. Like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Or you're 200% worse. Yeah,
exactly. Pick a direction. Yeah, totally.
Right.
Be careful. Yeah. Choose carefully. Well, you have picked the right direction. It's been a joy.
Such a joy.
For us to spend time with you, Anthony. We just are going to continue to be in the Anthony Evans Jr. fan club.
Yes.
We're going to make buttons and pins. Those are the same thing, pins and buttons.
Buttons and
pins are enamel, buttons are tin. These are going to be round and circular. For Anthony for president. But man, thanks so much. I hope everyone will get the newest book, When Faith Meets Therapy, with Stacy Kaiser. You mentioned the 2 books, the 2 series, the event and the conference. Sorry, I'm losing my mind here. And then of course all the music. Your newest record is Altered. Is there a project title for the new record?
I haven't told anybody. It's tentatively called Evidence, and yeah, we're literally like they're in the other room where we're cutting the songs right as we speak.
Oof.
Dang. Oh
Wow,
my
we
gosh, we're
can't
so
wait for that Evidence.
excited.
Is there a release date yet for Evidence?
Not yet, because I've made a point to I don't set release dates before the songs are forward enough for me to know, because then it puts pressure on my team and it makes everybody feel stressed out if we're behind. And it's like I don't like everybody around me
That's
feeling crazy.
wise.
Yeah.
That's so
Ain't
wise.
nobody got time for that.
Well, you should come visit us in Montana.
None.
We'll prepare some horse situation fun.
I was
100%. Horse situation fun will be what is waiting for you.
I'm down. I'm so down. I'm serious.
Horse situation
Ski
fun.
joring. We'll get you on the back of a horse pulling some skiers over some jumps or something.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to see you guys in person very soon.
Yes. God bless you.
Clear that table. We'll bring some delicious food.
Let's go.
Yeah, come on. All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
Okay, see you guys soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.